So we are going to continuously explanations from yesterday. The Four Noble Truths, the Noble Truth of suffering, the Noble Truth of origination, the Noble Truth of cessation, and the Noble Truth of path. So we mentioned the first part, the Noble Truth of suffering, yesterday. Because the suffering is as the nature of the samsara. Today we are going to explanations about why we are suffering, why samsara is with suffering. So in this way, the second noble truth we need to know, which is the noble truth of origination of the suffering. So in this world, some of the different the view, maybe they believe suffering comes, appears causelessly or automatically, without cause and without any conditions, just naturally appears suffering. But if you think that way, that is actually a mistake, it's a misunderstanding. Because if there are no cause and no conditions, then the result, fully repent, suffering cannot change because they have no logic. They have no reason. If they have no cause and no conditions, then why sometimes we have experiencing of sufferings, and sometimes, and they will be exhausting of the suffering. It's just a temporary moment change. So that is tells naturally the result of suffering must be with the cause and without conditions. Otherwise, once appears suffering, then cannot ceasing never, cannot stopping never, if there are no cause, no conditions. Or if not yet appears suffering, and then will never, cannot experiencing if we have without cause and conditions. But that is not true because we can experience directly suffering is the changeable perception on mind, and then even if somebody says it's true, suffering also must be depend to the cause and conditions, but they believe one single permanent cause for all of the various appearances of the different kinds of sufferings. I mean, all the different kinds of the sufferings or the samsara, the world, composed by the one single permanent cause. That also not logical. That also actually is the wrong logic, follow the view of wrong logic and wrong reasoning. So that also misexplanation because of the logic problem, the contradictory. If you said this, because the appearances, the result of the world or the suffering, not only one, they have hundreds, thousands different kind of the philosophy, the aspect of the suffering philosophy. So therefore, as that tells is that the cause also must be as the many difference. The conditions also could be many difference because the appearance the result is many different. Because one single cause, one's definition of single cause cannot producing different kind of the result. There's no possible. That is contradiction. So in this way, we understand as that not true. And then even if somebody says is true, could be they have many different causes to performing the samsara or the sufferings, but maybe it's somebody says is the performing the samsara must be necessarily depend to the influence of gods or the creator of a universe or something. That also, according to the Tibetan philosophy, where and then we cannot accept that advice, because if when they needed the cause and conditions completed, and then the result cannot stop. But if there's not yet completed the needed actual cause and conditions, and then the result cannot performing by the prayers of Buddhas, by the prayers of Bodhisattvas, by the prayers of gods, so on. As this cannot, so therefore that also actually hard to say that is true, And then this samsara now comes from the sufferings. If there's cause, then what is the actual cause? Then we say the result must be comes from to the similar cause. The result suffering cannot producing from the wrong cause and wrong conditions. That is not possible. For example, the apple fruit can producing similar to the cause of apple seed, but cannot producing from the wrong cause of the orange seed. Because if you say why apple fruit cannot producing from orange seed, why should be apple fruit comes from of apple seed? Then the answer, but that is the reality of the natural law of cause and effect. That is the nature relationships of between the cause and the effect. That is only the answer. So in this way now, what is the cause of the samsara or the suffering? So we can follow the logic of the noble truth of origination, the second noble truth, the noble truth of origination of the suffering. The origination, again, the noble truth of origination, we can divide into two different kind aspects or two different stages. One, the origination of karma, and other one is the origination of delusion. These two. So in this way, first we're going to little bit talk about what is the karma, because we say karma is as the actual origination of the direct origination or the direct cause of suffering. So in this way, we need to little bit to understand what is karma. Karma comes from this word is from the Sanskrit language. So on Tibetan could be say le. Karma means it's a le. So le on English literally say action or activity. Karma means it's the action of a person, from the person's action. That is we say karma, the meaning. And this way, this karma excuse me, can be there's two different actions. One is the contaminated action. Sorry. One is the uncontaminated action. There's two. But we are talking now the contaminated action because the result, performing the result of suffering from this karma, so that is with a contaminated karma. So uncontaminated karma is the actual causes for liberation or achievement, ultimate peace of nirvana. So we are now talking about the samsara, so therefore we are also talking about the contaminated karma. We're not talking the moments about of the uncontaminated karma. Okay? So these contaminated karma can be many different words, but in briefly we can maybe division into three different kind of categories. One is positive action, one is negative action, one is neutral action. So which means on the other hand we can say the karma of merits, the karma of non-merits, and the karma of immutable karma, or we can say immobile karma. So three. So this means is when we are going active with your body, with your speech, and with your mind. So our action, our activity, actually so many different kind aspect day and night. But the various of different kind of actions, and briefly we can division into these three: the virtues, non-virtues, or the positive and negative and neutral actions. So how we recognize which is positive action, which is a negative action, which is a neutral action? Because depend to the one's own motivation. Your achieving motivation is as positive, pure, like with compassion, or your motivation with loving kindness, your motivation is with tolerance, patience, or wisdom, your motivation want to attitude benefit to others, even cannot much benefit to others, and your motivation unless doesn't want to harming to others. So that kind of motivation, performing the actions from body and speech, heart, positive. They can performing positive actions because your motivation is positive. So therefore, doesn't matter what appearances your action, the reflection of action, the reflection of your body, speech, and mind, but could be is virtues or merits or positive action. And then the negative action or motivation with maybe angry or aversion mind, your motivation with of jealous to each others, or hatred mind, or harmful thought, harming mind, or your motivation with very craving, desire, attachment, or your motivation with very ignorance or misconception mind, or something like your motive is wrong motivation, or bad motivation, which means is you want to harming to somebody, you want to cheating to somebody, for example. Anyway, your motivation is mainly is performed from the three poisons, the negative emotions, with, and the achieved or the projected action from body and speech and heart could be into of negative action, because motivation is negative. Therefore, the action of body, speech, mind also has become negative action. So negative action, we can accumulation of non-merits. Positive actions can the chance, opportunity, collection of merits. But not always with these two, positive and negative. But many times we are also going the actions, activities in the neutral or equanimity action, not positive action, but not negative actions. Because again, depend on one's own motivation, not positive emotion, but motivation is not negative emotion, just neutral emotion, and then the action is also become neutral. So, for example, the negative action. Now, first we talk a little bit and briefly. What is negative action? Comes from the door of our body. Three kind of different actions. Negative actions comes from our body, which is the negative actions of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And then as the second group, negative actions comes from mainly door of our speech, which is lying, creating of discord, or we can say slander, harmful speech or harming speech, and chatters or meaningless talk, or adult the gossips. So these are the four negative actions, mainly comes from door our speech. And the last three of the 10 negative action, mainly producing the door of our, comes from the door of our heart or our mind, which is the negative action emotion of covetousness or covetousness. Negative action of the harmful thought or harming mind, and the negative action with of holding wrong views. So that is 3 negative action from our heart. Totally is 10 negative action. Now, how we say that is why that is negative? How we know that is negative? Because depend to understand from result, the repent result. If you will be experiencing the repent result is a happiness, enjoyment, then that is not negative. But the fully repent result experiencing as an unpleasant feeling or suffering, performing suffering feeling, that is tells us negative. So for example, killing, very clear. If your actions went with the killing, to kill somebody, and directly can hurt others' life, directly make suffering others of the object of killing, then no more higher sufferings and then the two cost of the life, because life cost of the life is the most of the strong of the one of the suffering among this samsara, So therefore they are suffering. They will be experiencing suffering when you go in active of killing. And then indirectly, you will be harming you yourself also by this killing. Because maybe with a very strong angry when you're going to kill your enemy. Or maybe very strong craving when you're killing to animals. Or maybe you have very strong ignorance. You believe killing is positive. So therefore, indirectly, you hurt yourself. You hurt by yourself, you hurt to yourself. So that is why we say negative action. Killing is as a negative action. And the stealing, same, very clear, directly harming to others and indirectly harming you yourself because very uncomfortable after stealing. Not that is only, but the problems for future. Even in this life, sometimes we have must be, the punished from the countries, the law, or the catch in the jail, for example. Not only, but this next rebirth falling in the lower hungry ghost realms, so forth, many problems. That is negative action. And then sexual misconduct actually can be there many different aspects, but in briefly we can understand is under the only our forcefully to rape, to others, or destroy the couple families, enter into the between of the couple families, or so forth. This kind is a sexual misconduct because directly harming to other people. The indirectly you hurt yourself. Problems in this life, uncomfortable feeling and suffering feeling, sadness feeling, disappointedness feeling, and on top, immediate next rebirth, falling unfortunate low realms, so forth. Because negative action, that is why. And then lying, to lie. So this also same directly hurt others' heart because when you're cheating, and directly you yourself hurt also uncomfortable after you cheating. And not only that problem and the future problems in immediate next rebirth. Same. The creating of discord or the slander to destroy the connections, relations between two family, two people, or two groups, or two countries. That's very, very strong negative. Hurt them directly and indirectly you hurt yourself. And just immediate next rebirth, danger to falling. Low realms, so forth, because negative. That is because negative action. And then harmful speech, harming speech with negative emotion directly can hurt somebody who hearing from you. And indirectly you hurt yourself, also uncomfortable after you use harmful speech. And future also problem. And the chottle, the gossips or meaningless talk, directly harming to other because they waste the precious time, precious the job or the work, many things they waste with listening about your adult gossips or chatters or meaningless talk, harming them. But directly and indirectly, you hurt, harming yourself also. You are also wasting your precious time and your precious life, so forth. And then it's disappointed, will be coming disappointed month, a regret month. Not that problem only, and the future also. And then the covetousness. Covetousness means is kind of like craving, kind of like very close attachment. But attachment to that belongs to the others' possessions. That is covetous. The definition of the covetousness means is with very strong the excess of craving to the pleasures object belonging to the others we want to get from them, we want to separate from them. That is the covetousness. It's a very strong negative. That's not normal attachment. That is not normal desire. Generally you can desire attachment to the external materiality object, but you cannot attachment to the belonging to the others things, which means is then you coming maybe stealing, maybe you want to wrapping for forcefully something. Anyway, that this comes from this wrong perception. Covetousness is very negative. Directly hurt, harming to other, uncomfortable, and indirectly you hurt your heart, yourself, also uncomfortable when you have very strong craving to the others' things, and then you cannot even will the sleep, cannot the taste of your delicious food is not anymore delicious. This problem. And then harmful thought, harming mind is very clear. We can experience that is very, very negative. Make others suffering, make others uncomfortable, make worry from other people. Other people make worry from us because we have full harmful, harming mind. They always doubt with us. And that same time moments, and you can also hurt you yourself because very uncomfortable when you have very the aversion mind or angry or something is the harmful or harming mind is feel the fault of the heart of your heart, then you have very uncomfortable feeling. Not that problem and moments, but on top problems for future and immediate next rebirth, falling in lower realm. So many problems. That's because negative action from heart. And then the last one, holding wrong views. That of course very strong negative. Because holding wrong view means is our view falling extremes of maybe permanent cause and effect, or maybe falling extremes of non-existent or nothingness, or means is a nihilistic, falling extremes of or materialism or nihilism view. Because that problems, then if you doesn't believe natural law of cause and effect, which means you doesn't believe virtue is as the cause of happiness. If you doesn't believe non-virtue or the negative action is as the cause of suffering, then always easily coming your activity, our activity of body, speech, mind is with negative. Easily, appears there as the 10 negative actions continuously, because you have no idea that is negative. You have no idea thinking about that is bad, So, because you holding the wrong views, extremes falling of wrong view. But sometimes even not only recognize negative is as negative, but unfortunately is the opposite. They're holding to the opposite because negative, they believe that is positive. And then more problem. This you can see some is they believe the killing is as positive, they believe, So therefore some holiday, they do special the anniversary ceremony to kill, animals, hundreds, thousands, as much they can at the same day or same week, at the same month, that holiday, they just kill. But this is because they're misunderstanding, totally misunderstanding. But still they believe that is positive. That is unfortunately falling extremes of wrong view. This happened, problem. So that hurt directly others and indirectly hurt themselves because negative action. So therefore holding wrong view is a very danger, because follow the wrong after the wrong logic, and they are follow after the of wrong reasoning. In the end, they found the wrong view. That's the problem. So anyway, these 10 negative action is the non-merits, the collection of non-merits, which means is when you your activity is with of these negative action, that is non-merits or negative karma of negative. The action is negative, very clear. So in this way now, what is positive action? Easy, we now can recognize, because the opposite of the 10 negative action is as the very supreme virtue, very great virtue, very positive action. Just if you stopping the negative actions, that is just mere virtue. That is a virtue, but just mere virtue. But on top of this mere virtue, if you're cultivating on the opposite of negative, means is positive, the supreme, that is with a supreme virtue. For example, to save others' life, on top avoiding killing, releasing animals, or releasing sentient beings, on top avoiding killing, and to be generosity or giving activities, on top avoiding killing, the avoiding of stealing, and to receive moral effective vows or moral conduct vows or discipline, the pure discipline vows or something, on top avoiding sexual misconduct, and to speak truly, on top avoiding lie, and to speak reconciliation to other problems, on top avoiding creating discord or slander, and to speak gently, nicely, kindly with pure motivation, on top avoiding harmful speech and harming speech, and to talk meaningful talk, helpful talk with pure motivation to help beings, other beings, on top avoiding gossips or chatters or meaningless talk. Those are from body and speech, the 7 positive action. It's a very supreme, very great action, we can say. So these first 7 positive action and the 7 negative action is depend your motivation. Even sometimes appears the action of your body's speech is like positive, but if your motivation is negative, then that's just reflection of positive, but the actual activity is negative, because I mentioned your motivation is wrong, bad motivation. But showing to the people is a positive action from body speech, but that's just reflection of positive, because your main motivation is negative. That's also one problem, sometimes can be. And then the opposite, sometimes appearances looks like it's a negative action from speech and from body, but he or her, the achieving motivation is as a totally pure, without any hesitations, himself or herself, only want to attitude benefit to others with compassion and wisdom mind. But the techniques, the method looks like negative. They used negative action from body and speech. That is just reflection of negative action. Reflection of negative action actually is positive, because he or her main motivation is positive. So this is sometimes we have made confusing. We difficult to judge the holy beings, supreme beings, those noble beings. We can very difficult to judge what is positive, what is negative, because they have different techniques, different method. Only if you can read their motivation, then you can decide it, or that 100% sure negative, that 100% sure pure or positive actions. But he or her motivation we cannot read indirectly, because we lack the clairvoyance, So therefore, a little bit difficult exactly, but however, there's possibilities. And then not always reflection, of course. So most 80% and 90% is directly appears negative, but motivation also negative. Directly appears positive, and the motivation also negative. 80% and 90% is sure, But the rest present is difficult to judge because it can be reflection, because he or her motivation is hidden phenomena for us, and moments. So anyway, that's first 10 supreme virtues. And the last 3 supreme virtues, great supreme virtues, comes from our heart. Not only just avoiding the covetitude or covetousness, but on top to be the meditate, generosity meditation, giving meditation, with pure compassion and love attitude, want to benefit other sentient beings with the giving and generosity and meditation. And not only just about harmful thought, harming mind, but on top, doing the meditation with of compassion, loving kindness, benefit, want to benefit to others, or pure motivation. That's very, very supreme virtues. And the last one, not only just to avoid holding wrong views, but to hold or to fund the right views, which means is to understand the natural law of cause and effect. Follow after the perfect logic, follow after the perfect reasoning, and also use the excellent investigations and use the excellent analyticals to understand which is a necessary engagement object for benefit yourself and benefit to others, and to understand which is a necessary abandonment object, for harming yourself and harming to others clearly. And then the end, you can find the red view, because you can follow the red logic, red reasoning, and your red investigation analyticals. Finally, you found the red view. So you can trust natural law of cause and effect. Trusting faith is coming. Actually, can be faith division into 3 different categories, and briefly. The inspired faith, spring faith, and the confidence faith or trust faith. But important, we need to faith to the natural law of cause and effect with trusting faith. So trusting faith is only comes from logic, reason, and to understand, and wisdom mind. Because if you found the trust, if you can cultivate on the trusting faith to the natural law of cause and effect, then nobody can change your heart. Nobody can lead you to the wrong path. Not possible. After you understand yourself logically and reasonably, true virtue is as the cause of happiness, and non-virtue is as the cause of suffering. When you understand logically, reasonably, then nobody can change your heart, But the problems, many among this human realm have not yet enough clearly understand of natural law of cause and effect, but just circumstantially some favorable conditions there, and then say, oh, I love virtues, I don't like non-virtues. I want to collect merits, I doesn't want to collect non-merits, something. This, at the moment they have faith, but this is just blind faith. They have no logic, no reason, but the circumstance, the conditions as a moment round maybe depend to the red area, red place, or maybe depend to the red friend or something, or depend to the red family, something, and then they also follow just like culture, they're keeping. But this faith is not very good, not bad, but not pure, because can change easily, can destroy easily your faith. Easily you lose your faith. Some small obstacles appears, then you have doubt to the natural law, of course. Small obstacles, then easily you have change, So this is the problem. Does not mean the blind faith always bad, but not good, not good enough. So therefore, important to addressing the trusting faith from your wisdom mind, a judgment, to judge the perfect view. So anyway, so then the end you found holding the red view. So if you found the red view, your mind can focus on the red view, you better trust in faith, and then everything is become fine. Your body, the action of your body, the action comes from your speech, the action comes of your heart, have no any problems. Not only not have no problem for yourself, but you can also do benefit to others continuously, weeks, months, years, or whole of your life. And after of another life, you can benefit. So important to find the red view. However, this just invariably we say, what is a virtue, what is a non-virtue, which is negative action, which is a positive action. So the positive action is as actual causes of happiness in this life and for future life. The negative action is as direct causes suffering of this life and for future life, both. It's very clear. If you judge carefully, then very clear. 100% sure that's true. So particularly negative action, if too strong and long time, at the end, if you don't know how to purifications, and then with these negative actions to go through a next rebirth, and then immediate next rebirth, unfortunately, falling unfortunately low realms. This is the happened problem. And then if you have lots of accumulation of merits and virtues, 80%, 90% of your actions on this life, weeks, months, years, or whole life, and there are no any the obstacles, and then just immediate next rebirth, 100% we can guarantee, by logic and by the reason, we can guarantee reborn again in the higher, lest you will be born on the higher, on the fortune on the human or God realms. Not only just you reborn higher realm, but immediate next rebirth you found the red family, red country, red place, which means is easily you found connections, continue linking to the of the virtues, actions, or the red views. You have chance to more, find the red teachings for immediate next rebirth. So, therefore, because that's positive action. And then is a neutral, the immovable karma. Unmovable karma or unmutable karma. This means is, we say merits, non-merits, and unmovable karma. Non-merits is the cause, suffering, and the reborn low realm. The merits is the cause of a higher realm, reborn higher realm, and the happy enjoy and the welfare of the higher realm. And then is unmutable karma. Actually, that is a virtue, of course. Unmutable karma could be virtue, but that virtue will be lead us the reborn in the higher of God's realms, which means that this God is not a desire, but form realm, God of form realm, will be reborn God of formless realm. So that is unmutable karma, we say. It comes from man action, is not from body, speech, but man action mainly the activities, the unmutable karma actions from performing from your heart, means meditative concentration. The samadhi meditation, karma abiding meditation, for example. That is the karma, unmutable karma. So anyway, the karma is as a direct cause of the samsara. No matter we accumulated positive, negative, or neutral, but the fully repentant result will be in the samsara, the second existent, or the six realms, or three realms, we can say. Because negative karma lead us low realm, positive karma lead us a higher realm. But both are samsara still, That's why we say contaminated karma, because we already mentioned yesterday, No matter we are born as a low realm and a high realm, but some kind of the aspect of suffering is there. But because the reason is the projecting or the achieving karma is contaminated or impure karma. So therefore, as the result is also contaminated result. Maybe suffering of suffering, maybe will be experienced suffering will change, but there's no maybe 100% sure all pervasive suffering is clear, in the samsara. So therefore now, today we're talking the origination of suffering, the noble truth. So what is the direct origination of suffering of the samsara? Then the answer is, we say karma, the action, the person's action, the individual's action. And then in this way, it is possible to stop off the suffering, because nobody wants to experience suffering, both of the three types different sufferings. But first we need to know the actual cause and the conditions of the suffering. So now we understand a little bit the karma is as the causes of the samsara and the suffering. So therefore, now we need to know karma comes from where? Because suffering comes from karma, that we clear, understand. So therefore, now karma comes from where? Karma also causelessly appears there, or automatically appears there, or karma also comes from something, Then again, we say logically cannot be existent karma automatically and causelessly, not possible. So therefore, karma performed from delusions, our delusions, our emotions, because emotionally can cultivating of the virtue, positive karma, non-virtue, negative karma, and neutral karma. So from depend to the motivation I mentioned to you before. So means it's a delusion. So that's why the second aspect of the origination of suffering is with the origination of delusion. The noble truth of delusion, we can division into two categories I mentioned you. Origination of karma and origination of delusion. Origination karma is as a direct cause of the suffering. And then the origination of delusion is indirect cause of the suffering or the samsara. So now what is delusion? We can say delusion, afflictive emotion, disturbing emotion, negative emotion. We can say many different words, but point meaning is same actually. Which is like desire, very strong excess, experiencing very excess desire, will be experiencing very excess of the desire attachment and anger, aversionment, and very excess the experiencing of how say the ignorance and confusingment. So these we say three poisons: desire, anger, ignorance. These are the three emotions. We say three poisons. Why we say that is a poison? No matter indirectly you feel suffer or not, but directly or indirectly will be get sick or get pain. You will be have problem, sufferings coming, like poisoning food. Sometimes you can recognize, sometimes you cannot recognize poisoning is as poison. But no matter you recognize or not, but if you're eating the poisoning food, and then later after eating the poisoning food, then you will be get sick, ill. It's coming. Similar. we are also, is according to the like this natural law course, right? And then sentient beings of the samsara, we are sickness person actually, because we have disease, which meant the three poisons, the delusion or karma. These two origination is kind of like disease. In the Ultra Tantra text, Veda Ayamutraya, he says, Nadne Shivsha, Nike Gena Pangshala, Deni Toshi, Mana Tempersha, Dungarikina, Tengopana, Devjinam, Shivsha Pangsha, Ripersha, and Tempersha, which means is the suffering of samsara, the noble truth of suffering is like ill, like sick, sickness person like. So you must be need to recognize, I mentioned yesterday. But why we have sick and ill? With the cause or without cause? But 100% sure sick is comes from disease. Have cause, there happened something problems, the problem of the balance between four elements, or of the three, the Tibetan medical, we said three, there's kind of like three poisons, but it's in the medical way, we can say maybe the air, energy of air, or the energy of the bile, or energy of the film. So these are the three, we need balance, but if there's no balance, and then sick is coming, the disease is coming. Or the four element is we need balance, but not good balance, and then is sick is coming. The sick or the ill is coming, disease. So the karma, delusion of karma, the origination of karma and the origination of delusion is like disease, kind of like disease. So if we have with the origination of karma and the origination of delusion, the obscuration of karma, obscuration of delusions obscured to our reality mind, that means we have disease. That means is sooner or later will be sick, will be ill. The pain is coming when the time is on to complete of the conditions, because the cause is already there. So it's now it's waiting to completion of the conditions, and then when they completed the conditions, and then that's the means on the time is on, then it will be sick. The disease also same. Not just moment you feel directly when you have catch the disease, unpleasant. Maybe it's weeks, months, sometimes years you can't feel. You already have the catch of the disease there. But that's why we need to check up on the doctor, we need. But when you recognize of you're ill, you're sick, that times maybe it's already long time ago, you had already the catch of the disease, similar, So that is why Nadne Shivsha, Nike Gena Pangshala. So the disease is the abandonment object, right? So in this way, the karma, the delusion, the obscuration of karma and the obscuration of delusion, these two obscuration is the abandonment object. We must need try to avoid. We need try to abandon, abandoning these two, because otherwise we will be sick. The problem. So therefore, as some by ordinary training, ordinary hours training cycle existent better of karma and delusions. Therefore, ignorance is the root of samsara, we can say, actually. So now, how can we stop the delusion, which is desire, attachment, anger, aversion mind, or jealous, hatred, harmful thought, or greed, miserliness mind, or something, so many, different kind of pride or arrogant, so many different negative emotions. But the root is from ignorance. Ignorance is at the root of delusion. Delusion is at the root of karma. Karma is at the root of samsara, or the suffering. This is very clear. That is a natural law of cause and effect. Naturally, is dependent each other. Naturally related between of these groups, these stages. So in this way now, after we accumulated karma, then says is sooner or later will be experiencing happiness or the suffering. I mentioned maybe the first day if you are there. Because karma, there's 4 possibilities. The experiencing of the result karma is there's 4 possibilities I mentioned you before. The strong one, if you accumulated positive or negative karma very strong, the object is very high, and the text very long, over and over, that is very strong. If you accumulated positive or negative, no matter, is very strong, and the holy object or the high object and the long term, very strong motive, and then this karma will be the karma whose fruits will be experienced at the same time in this life. Means it's early age accumulated karma, and the end of your age, you will be experiencing the end of your age. You can feel, like for example, somebody to kill in this year, kill somebody, and next year you are caught in the jail for 20 years, for example. That is very strong. And directly experiencing suffering in the jail in 20 years, you killed somebody, for example. Kind of like this. The positive also same. Can experience happiness, enjoyment in these moments. So anyway, karma whose fruits will be experienced in this life. That's one possibilities. And then the second possibility is karma whose fruits will be experienced just immediate next rebirth, not this life. It's very important to know this, because have doubt coming. If you don't know this kind, then because doubt means is sometimes say, oh, this person is always that family, or this person is always as a negative, the activities, the misdeed actions, and then weeks, a month, a year, but they are still going very well, become rich and looks like peace, looks like happy something, and then what is karma? They said because negative is the cause of suffering, but they are still happy. And then as somebody is there always week, month, yearly is going very much activity and positive with the compassion and love, practice, meditate, but still you can see many obstacles, maybe short life, sickness, illness, or problems, or some lose your things, and then suffer. And then you have doubt. What is karma? That's not true, because there's a virtue is the cause of happiness, but that families, they get many problems, sufferings, but they are very positive family. So that means is you have not yet understand. That is, you have not trusting faith yet. I mentioned you before. Your faith, karma, was blindness faith. That is why you have easily doubt is coming now. So therefore now we need to understand the second possibilities, karma whose fruits will be experienced immediate next rebirth. For this we yet not appear there. This you cannot recognize in the moments. So therefore this bad karma can lead immediate next rebirth. The lower realm have no chance to experience the happiness next rebirth, must be in this life. The rest previous positive karma will be finished in this life. So therefore the negative family and moments sometimes you can say happy, enjoy. That is very bad sign actually. The positive family sometimes not always problem, but sometimes you can see some problem, sufferings there, but that's not very bad sign. Because it's the immediate next rebirth, there will be freedom from lower realm, or maybe they will be reborn pure land. So I have no chance will be experienced suffering. Only will be experienced in this life, resting something previous misdeed karma. Have no chance next rebirth will be experiencing suffering. So therefore, just immediate moments now, short term and small suffering to be finished, all negative. And then it's next rebirth directly reborn in the higher fortune realm or God, the pure land. So this is anyways immediate next rebirth. The karma whose fruits will be experienced immediate next rebirth. That is the second possibilities. And then third possibilities, karma whose fruits will be experienced in another circumstant lifetimes. But I mentioned actually the first day, these 4 possibilities. But just in case if you are new today, if you're missing the part. And then, because important, the karma whose fruit will be experienced in another circumstant lifetime. This another means is maybe after the 3rd life, maybe will be experienced after the 4th life, maybe will be experienced karma is maybe another, maybe 100th, after the 100th life, or after the kalpa's lifetime. That just means it's another circumstant lifetime, because depend to the completion of favorable conditions of the favorable, the cause and conditions. Cause is already there, but it depend to the conditions to complete, because it's not strong, was the and short term and tiny virtues or tiny negatives, and then takes time to repent, That is the 3rd. And the fourth possibility is karma whose fruits will not be experienced certainly. Certainly will not be experienced, karma whose fruits. This does not mean karma wasting automatically and causelessly. But when you found the antidote to the negative karma, purification, you can cleanse completely by the correct antidote. If you know how to purify your misdeed karma, and then it will not be experienced. Not necessarily will be experienced suffering because cleansed. That is the point. If still suffering is there, then that is not cleansed. The purification means it will not be experienced suffering because you have purified completely. That is the chance. 1. And same the positive karma also, unfortunately, can destroy sometimes when appears the very strong obstacles, and then can destroy your previous karma, the positive karma, and then will be experienced happiness also too. That's the 1, the 4th possibilities. And then actually karma, after we accumulated, whether a positive or negative, but there's 4 kind of different possibilities according to the result of karma. 1 is repent result, the aspect of repent result karma. 2nd aspect is the result to the similar cause. The 3rd is the result of environmental result, or the result of the controlling result karma. And according to the result of the result from the causes of person, these 4 possibilities. So first one, what it means repent result. Repent result I mentioned to you already, because negative karma, repent result is unfortunate 3 low realms and will be experienced suffering. And the positive karma, the repent result from positive karma and reborn at the higher fortune realm. For example, now we are born in this fortune in the human realm. That is a fully repent result of positive karma, or previous the positive karma, fully repent result. We are born in the human realm now, for example. This is fully repent result, for example. Not only just we are born in the human realm, but most of is enough quite good, happy, enjoy, and good harmonies and the welfares, the health extra in this life. The temporary happiness, enjoyment is good, quite good enough. That is because fully repent result of positive. The first one, possibility, repent result. And the second, the fruits similar to the cause, or fruits comes from similar to the cause, which means is even we are born in the human realm, but since naturally, if we like to stealing, sexual misconduct, or something we like to fighting, quarreling, or cheating, or something is nature is very negative activity. Like when since small child grow up, the one twins of born same day and same family, But these two, the brother or sister, are when they grow up naturally, one is very positive, one is very negative, you know. So the one they like very much, even as much they can to sip even small insect, you know, releasing small insect. The other one, as much they can, they like very much to kill as much can even small insect. That's nature. Quality is different. Even the twins, you know, they're born same day and same family and the same culture, but different actions coming naturally. One is very positive, one is very negative. One is very happiness, one is very wrathful, you know, it's a different activity. So why? So this kind is, we said, the result, these two is the experience, the result is different, you know. So the different experience, the result is, the action is different. One is peaceful action, one is wrathful action. These two, the twins. So that means is the result similar to the cause. He or her past life, different. Past life is like to stealing and like to fighting, like to war. And then even this life as naturally, even born a higher realm, but still is actual, is similar to the past life. One is very smooth and gentle, kindness, and the positive past life, and then this life and naturally is the same. That is the result similar to the cause, we can say. But result similar to the cause can be, there's two differences actually. One is basically action similar to the cause, and one is experiencing similar to the cause. There's two. Just I gave analogies, that is just action similar to the cause. Because as a he or her past life, previous ones very strong, he liked to fighting. So therefore in the action in this life also they like naturally like fighting. Is the action similar to the cause. Then experiencing similar to the cause meant is the feeling, these two. One is a happy life and a long life, a healthy life, a good harmonious, peaceful and resting feeling, and gentle kindness feeling they experienced. This is experiencing similar to the he or her past life also, or previous, their positive karma. And the other is the opposite. It's a sadness feeling and a very panic, areas of worry or something, you know. It's a very suffering or sorrow because they're experiencing this suffering similar to the previous karma. This is the possibility. And then is the depend to the collective karma, the result of the environment or the controlling result. Because you can see almost each family have chance to remaining in different place, different country, different nice place, bad place, good country, bad country, safety place, and very danger road place is there. Have to they stay there. Of course, everybody want to red country and red place and safety place, but they have no choice, you know. So this is why they separate these two different the environment, good the environment and bad environment, good place and red place. There's remaining on the whole life. Why? Because this is the result, controlling result to the past karma is changed different, you know. And the fourth, the last one, the result actions better of person. The experiencing the result is the actions better of individual, which means is Buddha says that means is because karma created better person, so therefore will be experienced also as better person, but cannot experienced from the materials or tangibles or something, particles. It's not possible. Because it created better person, so will be experienced also better person himself. The person means is not others' karma will be experienced the other person. That is not. So here the point means is who created was the karma and will be experienced from themselves, to themselves experienced. But your karma cannot experienced from other people. Other people's karma cannot experience, will not be experienced to the other persons. Only one who accumulated and will be experienced to this person. You know, that is why Buddha says karma committed will not be dissipated. The karma not accumulated will not be experienced. That's the point, you know. Sooner or later. So, therefore, now the question is how follow the karma to us to the life after of another life. This yesterday, so we say we understand little bit is something you wronged action in this moment is very strong, and then you have next day or next week problem. This we can see little bit, you know, and you something is the virtuous deed, very good action, and then you have become very famous, or people respect you, honor you, worship you, support you, or you have many relationships. Good, this we can see in this life, but we're talking about life after of another life. Comes from past life and through from life after. This very hidden phenomena for us, you know. So therefore, questions: how can follow us karma, life after of another life? That means does not mean your course level previous actions or our positive action is directly follow us to the next rebirth. That is not possible. Already past is as past. But the imprint of your previous action could be stored stream on the of your mind, the stored on the of your stream mind, the imprint, which means the habitual basic tendencies follow you. That is, for example, when you in the the kindergarten or something in the sub-school, when you first starting in the alphabet, like A, B, C, D, for example, when you studied, and repeating again and again and again from teacher, and then they show you some of the pictures or something, and then you again and again repeating first day, next day, and 1 week or something, then you can memory very much clearly. You can recognize clearly which is A, which is B. You know, you can read, you know, very easily. You can. That means that is your action. You know, that moment your action follow the teacher. You know, to learning starting about the alphabet, A, B, C, D. But you don't need to learning starting the alphabet every week, every month, every year, since start until now, not. But after you learned this, and then is many years, you not focus on this ABCD. But when and maybe 10 years later you saw on the paper or something there's ABCD, then you can recognize easily. Oh, that is A, that is B. You know, that means is the imprint of your past time was you learned the alphabet stored on the stem your mind. So therefore, even you passing as many years, but you can, when the favorable conditions appears there, then you can recognize, then you remember, right? You will experience. You know, similar karma, the imprint of your previous karma stored on your mind, the stem your mind. So therefore, at the moment you can't see directly now, maybe because of your past life, maybe you have so many positive the virtues, but you can't see directly. Or probably you have many accumulated, you have the negative karma imprint stored on your mind now, but we can't see in the moments. But when will be completed the needed conditions, and that time you will be experienced coming. Maybe this life, or maybe next immediate, next rebirth, or I'll mention you in another circumstance lifetimes. So this means is the imprint stored on you, but you can't see yourself even. Of course, other person cannot see others' karma, but even you yourself, you cannot see directly, you know, the karma. But no matter you can see or not, no matter you can feel or not, but already imprint stored on your mind, then will be seedlings coming. Because the actual seed is sown on your Buddha, the base of all consciousness is the fundamental, the basics of the karma. So in this way, is karma follow us. As long as remaining continuously, your mind, your consciousness is there. The stream, the continuity stream, your mind is there. And then the imprint of your previous karma can start on there, if yet not completed to experienced, yet not finish better your purifications then and stored in there, both of positive and negative, even neutral, karma. So this is how follow karma to us for future. Anyway, when the accumulation to the accumulation karma, there's again, I'm saying another 4 possibilities. So a little bit important to understand how we creating karma. There's 4 possibilities for creation karma. Strong one, and the second least strong one, and the least the worst one, the worst strong. So there's four kind of different, 4 tips, different possibilities for creation karma, which we say karma accumulated and karma does act. This is first one. Second possibility is karma accumulated but does not act. Third possibility is karma not accumulated but does act. And the fourth possibility is neither, not, both of the not accumulated and does not act. So which means the first one, we say karma accumulated and does act. This means is one action of your positive or negative, no matter, is completed, needed the conditions, which means is there 4 branches. For collection karma, we need the real karma. To creation real karma, we need to collect 4 branches. When they completed the 4 branches, and then you have accumulated karma, positive or negative. So 4 branches, for example, now we go to the analogies on the killing, for example, how you recognize you have completed the karma of killing or not yet completed the karma of killing is you need to depend the 4 branches. The completed 4 branches of the killing, then killing is complete. If missing 1 branches of these 4, and then yet not completed the strong one of killing. So for example, the first branches, the branches of object of killing. If you are a hunter, when you recognize there's an animal like tiger is there, then what do you feel? How you recognize that? Just normal tiger? No. That is for you is the object of killing because you are a hunter, So that is first branches of the 4 is completed there. 1 branch is complete there because you recognize there's an object of killing. 1 for killing. And the second branches, the branches of your motive, the motivation. What is your motivation if you are a hunter? Because you very strong desire to kill. You very strong attachment, craving to kill this tiger, This is because you are a hunter. That's your motive. That is your motivation. So this is second branches complete to killing. Want to kill. Not only just you found the object of killing, but you want to kill. And then on top of these 2 and third branches, the branches of actual action to killing. What is actual action means? You need to use the techniques to kill. Maybe you should, or maybe you need to use the poisons or the hooks or lassos, or so many methods to killing. Anyway, your activity, the actual activity you need to use to kill. That is the third branch is complete of killing. Now the rest, last branches. The branches of completion, conclusion, or completion, we say, because completely dead is a tiger. You killed. They are dead, completely dead. That is the 4th branch is completed. So this kind of killing is a very strong negative of killing. Means that's real. You created the karma of killing because completed the 4 branches. So these karma, the first possibility is we say karma accumulated and does act. Because you had accumulated killing of the karma of killing, also does act because you killed by your action. So you killed and you accumulated karma killing also. So therefore this is a karma accumulated and karma does act. That's the first one. Very strong one, killing. And the second strong one of killing is karma accumulated but does not act. Which means that the tiger is jumping, run away. You have very feeling disappointed because you couldn't shoot. They run away. But first is already the branches object of killing you saw, you seen, and then your motive is already you want to kill, sure. That's why you disappointed, when they run away. And then maybe is your active action to killing is maybe you should, but you couldn't get on the target, they run away. So therefore the last one missing, the branches of killing, the actual of the conclusion, the completion, not a complete, because the tiger ran away. So you have complete 4 branches, the 3 branches of these 4, but missing 1. So now questions, you have negative karma, you created a negative karma of killing or not? The answer, yes. You accumulated negative karma of killing. Because that means it's a karma committed, but does not act. Because your action doesn't work. Because you couldn't kill. They ran away. But still your karma already committed. The negative karma killing already committed. But not like first one, like that strong. But the second strong, this is the 4 possibilities, the second possibility is strong one. Killing. This is a karma committed but does not act. Now the third is a karma not accumulated but does act. That is, we go to another example now. For example, when you're driving very fast the car and just suddenly jumping some animals, the cat or dogs or something, is then you accident and killed, completely killed and dead. Animals dead by your car accident. Now what is your feeling? You have disappointed, right? You have regret because that is not your motive. So therefore this object is not the object of killing for you, but is killed, dead. So your action, the driving, is not the actual action to killing. Your actual action is to driving, not killing. But the completion stage is there because dead. This is so that means the karma not accumulated but does act. Killing is act already active of killing is there, on as it happened, but not like that strong killing of the first one, not like that second, even the second like negative, not karma not accumulated does not mean that there's no any karma. You have of course karma of killing, but very very weak the power, very tiny, almost is not certain karma. So that's why we said karma not accumulated but does act. You killed, you're dead, animals are dead. So these are the 3. The last one, third one is very very small, tiny negative. But if you don't know, looks like this is more strong because dead animal. This is more strong than the second, because second is run away, you couldn't kill. But actually the second is more strong, your negative, is than the third one. Because this tells us your motivation, right? So you can judge by this, that we only use one of killing, but then you can stealing, sexual misconduct, everything, so you can judge like this logic. Not only negative, the positive also you can judge by this logic, the 4 branches to saving animals, for example, also karma accumulated does not act extra, so on. And then the 4th possibility is that we can see as normal, a usual. Karma not accumulated and karma does not act. This is normal, normal action. So anyway, So this is how going the karma activity, both of positive and negative, and how karma, which karma is more strong. So anyway, after we accumulated this karma and then the imprint stored on your mind. So positive karma we need to protect, and we need to increasing continuously as much as can. And negative karma, as much we can need to purification. We need to cleanse as much you can. It's very important. So this is the origination of karma, and karma comes from the origination of delusion. So this both is the origination, noble truth of origination of suffering, the second noble truth. So this noble truth of origination, and briefly I can say again, there's four aspects among the 6 kind of different aspects, the antidote to the 6 wrong perception, the 16, I'm saying the 16 wrong perceptions. Each the noble truth, we have 4 aspects of the wrong perception. The antidote also, there's 4 antidote to the 4 kind of the wrong perceptions I mentioned yesterday. So therefore, this noble truth of origination, 4 aspects. One is the aspect of cause, the cause. Second is the aspect of origin of all. And third aspect is aspect of strong protection. And the fourth one is the aspect of conditions. So which means is the first one. Why? Because if you understand the noble truth of origination, then you will be free from the falling extremes of these 4 holding the wrong views. If you doesn't understand yet clearly of the noble truth of origination, then maybe possible you falling your views the extreme of these 4 kind wrong aspect. So that's why we said the first one, antidote, aspect of cause of origination. Because somebody says, holding wrong view says there's no cause of the samsara. The suffering is to have no cause. That is wrong. So therefore, Buddha taught us, but logically, samsara has cause. What is the cause? I mentioned you, karma and delusion. These 2, that is the cause, aspect of cause. And then even if you agree that with the cause, but the cause is, I mentioned you before, the wrong cause and wrong conditions. Someone says that the permanent one single cause of samsara. That is not true. So therefore, what is truth? The second aspect of origin of all. Origin of all. That is the truth one. Which means is the origin of all means is the appearances of fully repent of samsara. The aspect of samsara is so many different kind, the various different kind of sufferings, various different kind of the repent result of samsara. Like, for example, 6 realms. So therefore, is the cause also must be is a different aspect, because one single permanent cause cannot producing various different results. This is contradiction, not possible. If fruitions many different kind, and that tells the conditions also many different. So not one single permanent cause. That is wrong. The red is origin of all, because result is many. So therefore, their origin is also many different kind. Many different delusions, many different karmas, that means. And the third, the strong protection. The strong protection. The strong protection. This strong aspect of strong protection means is because some maybe of human realm, the beings, they believe cause and the conditions of the samsara and the suffering. But as one important thing is necessary to depend on the creation of the creation, the credit of better God. or maybe need to depend to the creations created. This result of suffering comes from of depend to the of creation of God, or something as or deities, or something like this. Means the influence depend to the influence of the gods or the creators or the deities, Buddhas or Bodhisattvas. But that's not true, actually. Because the actual cause is the karma and the conditions of the delusions. These two, when the needed cause condition completed of the delusion, karma, and the obscuration of karma and obscuration of delusions, and then no need. On top there, no need to add some another conditions of gods, creators, or Buddhas, Bodhisattvas. For example, the seed is not sown under the ground. The farmer missing the red seed. There's no seed on the ground, on the field. And then even Buddha's prayers cannot help. God himself cannot creating without seed. But the needed seed is sown there, and the needed conditions of the temperatures, the moistures, the filters, or everything if completed, and then no need prayer, better Buddha or better God, but seedlings coming. So the fruitions comes from red cause and red conditions. No need to add on top there's extra others. No need, So that means is we say like karma and delusions, or the craving of the samsara, or the attachment of samsara is enough strong conditions, or strong enough to producing of the suffering of samsara. So that's why we say strong production. The aspect strong production is the delusion is as a strong production. The karma is as the strong production of this samsara. No need to add on top their other creations. And the last one, fourth aspect of origination, is a condition aspect, the conditions. The conditions means is because if you say samsara, the suffering is naturally permanent. The suffering nature is unchangeable. Means suffering is always the reality is stable. So therefore you cannot stop, they says. But circumstantially as it can change. They says temporarily can change suffering, but ultimately cannot change. Ultimately is the suffering or the samsara is permanent ultimately, but is temporarily impermanence can change. If you said this, that is also not logical. That is also not reasoning. It's wrong. Wrong logic and wrong reason follow. That's not true. Because why temporarily change? These are the questions. Because you must need to tell some conditions. When the completed unfavorable conditions, and then suffering is there. But when exhaustion, unfavorable condition, then the temporary suffering is gone. So therefore, this is dependent to the cause and conditions, right? And then if something is necessarily dependent to the cause and conditions, that means is the reality also can change. The suffering nature is changeable, not true, unchangeable. Unchangeable object is not true. Because you said depend to the conditions. If necessary to depend the conditions, then the effect is not permanent. So therefore, Buddha explanations, the aspect of origination, one aspect of origination is with conditions. If you understand the suffering with the conditions, if you understand the samsara is with conditions, that means is samsara is impermanence. Suffering is impermanence. That we are lucky. We are really fortunate because we can have chance to freedom from suffering. We have chance freedom from the fault of samsara because that is not permanence. The samsara and the suffering is impermanence. The nature is changeable. So therefore, sooner or later, one day, we will be freedom from all the sufferings. Suffering of change, and all pervasive suffering. So That is why we need to understand what is the origination of suffering. If you clearly, logically, reasonably, if you recognize the karma and the delusion is as actual causes and conditions of suffering, then you understand, so how to free from this. But if you doesn't know what is the actual cause condition from suffering, then you never found the solutions how free from the suffering, not possible. For example, when we have suffering with hungry and thirsty, then why we are suffering? But I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm suffering. But just why you are hungry, why you are thirsty? This is the second question. We know why we are suffering, because I'm hungry. Why I'm suffering? Because I'm thirsty. But then second question is why you are hungry, why you are thirsty? Then why you think? Oh, because not enough food, not enough drink. Okay, therefore what do you need? I need to eat food. I need to drink red water. That is. So now we understand is there's no enough good food, not enough good drink. So that's why you are hungry and thirsty. Therefore you are suffering of hungry and thirsty. So that's the point, It's the origination, the noble truth origination is the origination of suffering. So these first two truths, noble truth, is we need to understand the relationships between of the cause and effect of abandonment object, because nobody wants to suffering. Everybody wants to freedom from the suffering. So therefore we need to understand suffering with the cause and without the cause. If with the cause, then which is right cause, which is wrong cause? So now the end answer is suffering with the cause, but the right cause is the karma and the origination, the delusion. These two, the origination of karma and the origination of delusion, that is the right cause of suffering. So we need to recognize this. This two is actually abandonment object. But if you couldn't recognize truth, then you cannot find the solutions to free from suffering. That's why important. First, whether you're comfortable or not, but we need to know these situations and moments. And then the rest, other two, noble truth of cessation and noble truth of path is, we will talk. And tomorrow and after tomorrow is coming, is there further. So we live here today. Okay, so, anybody, if you have any questions, we have 5 minutes only.
Can I ask a question? Does compassion bring purification in us against
Samsara is a little bit, we can say, compassion. Compassion is actually essence of Dharma. Compassion is the essence of any kind of practice of Dharma, actually. But compassion alone, alone, only you practice compassion alone. Only this, if you're missing wisdom, then still you cannot free from samsara. But if full your heart is compassion, I'm sure you will be free from lower realms. There's no need to following the lower realms, because following lower realms comes from the 10 negative actions. But if you are full compassion, they have no reason to stealing, killing, extra 10 negative actions. It comes from opposite of compassion, So therefore you can free from lower realms. You will be reborn higher realms. You can do many benefit to yourself and benefit to others. But also, of course, compassion can be the indirect causes to liberation. But compassion is not a direct cause to liberation. But on top of compassion, we need wisdom. But these kind, as we talk tomorrow, when they're talking noble truth or cessation, noble truth or path, that times you get the right answers. How can liberation of the force and samsara?